So now I'm going to demonstrate how to go about acknowledging and documenting on a case in Therap. So remember we said when logging in, you have to have your username, your login name or your username is your first initial, last name. Password you should have written down or stored in your phone or stored somewhere safe so that way you can remember it. But remember the rule that applies to the password. You have to have a capital and you have to have a symbol. So now you may notice that I've logged in where it's different from the other video. And it says that I now have to acknowledge something. So as soon as you are assigned a case, it will come up that you have to acknowledge. In order for you to acknowledge your case, you click on Acknowledge, and it brings you to the ISP program, which outlines the goals you'll be working on with the individual. So you see, for this particular demonstration, I've been assigned to work with Mr. Antoine Anderson for Community Hab. You'll see over here, it says that it's not acknowledged. So because it's not acknowledged, I have yet to read the document and I can't complete any documentation as it relates to this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this particular line and it brings me to all of the information as it relates to the individual. So you see we have the goal and the service for this particular individual. Staff will provide support and assistance to him to maintain a clean apartment. Staff will encourage and teach him needed skills to complete housekeeping and chores. He has a number of different goals that he's working on. You'll see the schedule and the frequency as well. So this is how many times he should be working on these goals per week. This right here, the maximum number of times a day, is the amount of times that the staff member has to actually document. You'll notice underneath it says frequency of documentation, which is extremely important upon service delivery. So as soon as you complete the service or work on the goal with the individual, we want you to document that you've done so. Location is blank because the location you're going to enter when you go to document, and I'll show you that shortly. Here's the criteria for completion. So this outlines when his goals will be completed, and we'll know if we need to move him on to other goals. And then down at the bottom, you'll see there's a header called task. This talks about the different tasks associated with him completing the goals. It's extremely important that you read the entire document and acknowledge the document. So the teaching method, how the staff will go about actually supporting or working with the individual as it relates to the goal. And down here is just who actually entered this ISP program into the system. After you read through everything in detail, you scroll all the way down to the bottom, and on the right you'll notice there's a button that pops up that says Acknowledge. You hit Acknowledge and you're prompted. It says, I acknowledge I have read, understood, accurately implement this program. That is an attestation that you're aware of what you're working on with the individual. After you have read in detail, you hit yes. Now, because this is the initial time that we've logged in and acknowledged the plan, it gives us the opportunity to document right in that moment. So I'm going to show you what it looks like to document right in the moment, but I'm also going to show you what it looks like when you've documented a number of times and how you go in and actually access the documentation portion. So if you wanted to document right in the moment, you would just hit next, and you see there's the date for the documentation. Today is October 25th. You hit next, and it brings you to the data collection as it relates to the documentation. The begin time, that's the start time of your shift. The end time is the end time of your shift. Location, you type in where the location was. So if it was in the individual's home, if it was in the library, if it was in the park, wherever the location is, you enter the location in there as well. Then we come down to the different task scores. In order for us to accurately depict that we've worked on the goals, we go over here to where it says scores and comments. And then you have service provided, service not provided, or not applicable. In order for it to be a billable service and working with the individuals, the services should be provided. So you click service provided. If you want to write a little comment or note as it relates to providing the service, you will put it in here. So let's just put Antoine did an excellent job organizing his shoes. You move down to the next goal, and then for the next goal, you work on it, service provided, etc. Service provided, service provided, service provided. After you've finished providing all the services and you've notated that the service has been provided, you must click that is billable. You click yes. Group count, you don't worry about. And comment is if you want to add any additional information as it relates to working with the particular individual. So this again would be if you decide that you're going to document immediately after you initially acknowledge an ISP program. Let's back out of this though so you can have an opportunity to see what it looks like when you first log in after you've acknowledged and then you document. So you'll notice here at the top, it says currently empty. It says currently empty because there's nothing left to acknowledge. You've already acknowledged and accepted the plan that you're going to implement and work on that plan to the best of your ability with the individual. In order for you to document, when you go in, you go to individual, and in individual, you go to ISP data, you go to new, and then you'll see the program pop up. Now, depending on what program you're assigned to as a staff member, it'll show the various different programs that you have access to. For this particular documentation, because Antoine is in ComHab, you hit ComHab. You notice after you hit ComHab, the case that you're assigned to is going to, you click on the case that you're assigned to, which is Antoine Anderson. And it brings you back to a familiar screen that we've seen earlier, which is the ISP program list. Now, remember earlier said that it was not acknowledged. Now we have here that it was acknowledged because you've read it and you acknowledged it. So what you want to do is you click on it anywhere, and then it brings you right back to that screen for documentation. Here's the calendar for the day that you want to document on. You just select the date. After you select the date, you hit next, and it brings you back to that original screen that I showed you a few minutes ago. With the begin time, the end time, the location, service provided, and that's pretty much it. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties where you don't have the ability to acknowledge a plan, please contact your supervisor so your supervisor can provide assistance in the plan.